All right, day 4 here in Las Vegas, officially in the books, completed today, the UFC 194 weigh-ins and the TUF 22 finale. The big news tonight, of course, Frankie Edgar knocking out Chad Mendes in the very first round. I'm being joined by Chuck Mindenhall, the man in the hat. That, of course, is Shaun Al-Shatti. I am Ariel Helwani here. Following the post-fight press conference, Chuck, let's start with you. Frankie Edgar knocking out Chad Mendes in the first round. Did you see that coming?
I did.
Get out of here.
Of course not. I don't think
I'm going home.
I was sort of doing the live blog and was right. I had my head down when somebody went down. I heard everybody jump up, so I looked up and I assumed right off the bat that Chad Mendes had caught him because if somebody was going to get caught in the first round, I assumed it was going to be Chad Mendes landing something big, and it would be Edgar, the one on the ground. Because you remember back in the day, we used to say, well, Frankie Edgar he's not in a fight until we start seeing him bloodied up a little bit. That's when he starts to come to life. I still sort of remember that, so you always think in the first round might be the time to catch Frankie Edgar. I still sort of carry that, even though he's been taking way less damage since he's been a featherweight. But, yeah, that was surprising. I did not see that coming.
And, Shaun, great knockout and all, probably the best win of Frankie's career. But part of me kind of feels bad for him because, let's be honest, if Conor wins tomorrow, there's a good chance they'll do that rematch, and he's going to be sitting on the sidelines. I feel like he can't fully celebrate. Do you agree?
I don't know if he can't fully celebrate because that was just something like there were several paths of victory or just outcomes that fight could take, and I don't think anybody saw that coming. So he can probably celebrate. I mean, I don't know if they'll really make him fight again, even if they have to do that rematch. He could probably sit on the sidelines for a little bit. But what it does is it seemed like Conor was really dead set on moving to lightweight after this whole Aldo chapter's over. It kind of seems now like he won't be able to do that if he does beat Jose, because I mean, if he tries to leave now, all the public will tell him that he's a coward running from Frankie. I mean, Frankie seems to have this big wave now at his back.
Yeah.
So I don't know if I'd say he could celebrate. I think he did something special tonight.
What do you think happens to Chad Mendes now? I kind of feel like he needs a bit of a break. I mean, that's the big picture, but what direction does he go in? Does he even stick around at 145?
No, man. I mean, you got to feel bad for the guy, right? Like, that guy's had a really tough year. He was kind of putting all of his eggs in this basket. Didn't work out for him. I don't know. I mean, he is still a top 4 guy, but it's very clear now that he is the 4th below, the 2 title guys in Frankie. He's in a really rough spot, man. You
gotta feel for Frankie in a good way, obviously. I mean, he stepped up. He had a point to prove. He calls out Dana White again. He gets the chat.
Old hat at this point. They always go, yeah.
He gets the chat in the back, and Dana promises a title shot for him. But let's be honest, just talk to Misha Tate. We've been there before. Hopefully, it works out for him. If you're Frankie and you are getting a title shot, who are you hoping for tomorrow? Are you hoping for the rematch against Aldo, or do you want the big name Conor McGregor fight?
I really believe him when he says he wants Aldo. I think that it sort of burns him a little bit. That was his first fight at featherweight. I know that Mark Henry and him have sort of poured over film, and I think Mark Henry especially has been. I remember talking to him, and he was like, "We could beat him." He was very confident. They thought they'd figured it out. I think he'd probably want that if it's there. But of course, he's right. It's a no lose situation. I mean, if it's Conor McGregor, that's going to be a big fight, especially coming off what he just did with Chad Mendes. That becomes like a really huge fight if that's what gets put together. But, man, I don't know. I think ultimately he would like to avenge his loss, though. You remember, it's funny that we're talking about how conditional it is for him to get this title shot every time. It's like he's always sort of a little bit behind the 8 ball. He can't get the clear shot. But he was the guy who was sort of bottlenecking the lightweight division for a while with all of his rematches, so it's sort of a weird situation that he finds himself in the featherweight. But I think he wants Aldo. I think that's who he wants.
I loved your question at the press conference about him being a pound-for-pound great. It feels like finally he's getting that respect. Well, after being a champion, now this sort of second wind in his career, we can really celebrate his career. This is one of the greatest of all time.
I think so. And I mean, he kind of had a couple of losses in there, and he had some close fights, but it was always like he was fighting bigger guys. There was always something about it, like we got off to a bad start in a fight, stuff like that. I feel like what we've seen him minimize his damage at featherweight, and just he doesn't, it's just, to me, he just looks like a different fighter. He's getting better. He's going up against guys. All the migration now that the featherweights have just been like so loaded. I mean, I feel like he's looked great, against these really big names. And so I think at this point, that's why I was brought that up at the press conference, because at the time, he was 155 pounds. He didn't have to cut any weight. Now he's at 145, where I think a lot of people are like, how would he perform there? And I think he's showing us, man, he's amazing at this weight. So he's going to be a force. Whichever guy he fights next it's going to be an entertaining one.
And great call pointing out Mark Henry. He has really transformed him into one of the great strikers in the entire sport, let alone that division. Let's talk about the tough finale. Ryan Hall defeats Artem Lobov via unanimous decision. It was a very dominant win. And look, I'm going to come out and say it. I actually enjoyed the fight. Yeah. Am I crazy? I mean, here you have a guy who's one of the very best at what he does. He's going for the finish, and to criticize him seems crazy to me. If you're going to criticize someone, you criticize Artem for not being able to stop it. Why did they hate this fight so much? I thought it was incredibly entertaining. I'm being honest.
No, I agree. I mean, I enjoyed the fight. I think it's something new and a breath of fresh air to see, the leg lock guys work their magic. It's something we don't see often, and so when you have someone so technically proficient at it, it is fun. It's cool to see that kind of thing. And also, I didn't really understand Dana White complaining about Herb Dean not separating them or splitting them up with the last 3 minutes of the fight when he's kind of hanging on his back. I mean, that's a very advantageous position. All it takes is one little slip, and he had a body triangle locked on.
Yeah.
It takes one little slip, and you're in a very, very killer position. So I don't know why people would be down on the fight. I thought it was an interesting fight.
It wasn't a wrestler laying on top of his opponent, not doing anything. I mean, I felt like Ryan was going for some. It's interesting if we could go back, sort of like that movie Sliding Doors. Like had Artem not trained with Ryan, would he have defended those as well as he did? It seemed like he just had enough knowledge about how to defend all his submission attempts. And unfortunately for Ryan, he didn't get the finish. But to me, it was super dominant, and I thought it was rather impressive. What was your takeaway? Did you side with the fans, the curmudgeons online who hated that?
No, not really. I find that when you watch fights, if a certain pattern is developed in a fight, sometimes you hear hatred for it because they feel like they've already seen it telegraphed the whole way. They know what's going to happen. For whatever reason. Obviously, we knew what he was going to try to do, but his points of entry and stuff when he was trying to, he's going in and putting those submissions, attempts on him were really fun. I thought, man, especially in the first round, I was like, oh, here we go. I even tweeted our guy Luke Thomas because I know he's such a nerd when it comes to jiu-jitsu. But I had a fun time with it. But I think after it sort of got established, I think that's people were like, well, this is all we're going to get for 3 rounds, and that disappoints people. But for me, it's a lot of fun to watch that.
And also, when you have a guy who has one-punch knockout power and another guy who can submit you like that, to me, that's interesting. It feels like you don't want to blink.
And it was so one-sided. I think somebody said that he had only 2 significant strikes in the 15 minutes. I mean, that's sort of whitewash of a fight. I mean, it's hats off really to Hall more than it is the other way. So.
Fight of the night, Tony Ferguson defeating Edson Barbosa. We just got word, by the way, that Ferguson was transported to the hospital, but checked out, all good, no problems there, so that is obviously good to hear. I mean, obviously he has some cuts, and he lost a little bit of blood, but it was a tremendous win for Tony. He has definitely stepped up to the plate. He now has 7 wins in a row. That's second longest in the UFC's lightweight division behind Donald Cerrone, who fights for the belt next week. Has he done enough now to warrant a title shot? Because I think you may have tweeted that.
I want to ask him.
And I may have a bone to pick, but let's go on the record here.
He 100% deserves it. I do not understand the people saying that he doesn't at this point. It's 7 wins, 6 finishes. He's beaten guys like Josh Thompson the way that he's beating them. It's incredible. I'm still buzzing about that fight. That was a tremendous fight. That was so much fun. And how lucky are we that fight didn't get stopped in the first round with that illegal up kick? That would have that would
devastating.
That would have kind of killed the show a little bit because it wasn't that good of a card until that point. I mean, I just love everything Tony Ferguson's doing right now. His whole persona, his intensity, his style, his entries and his exits, and just the way his movements, and he's going for these rolling knee bars and stuff.
Yes.
Just everything about that fight was so entertaining, and Barboza just smashing him in the body the entire time. I thought that was a fantastic fight, perhaps a fight of the year contender.
You don't think that we should wait for the winner of Pettis and Alvarez just to see what happens there? You don't think Pettis deserves that nod if he wins?
I don't think so, because that would be Pettis' first fight back from RDA. 1 win to me, even if it's over in Eddie Alvarez, does not equal 7 wins with 6 finishes over the likes of, all these guys that Tony Ferguson has fought.
And I don't want to take anything away from Tony Ferguson. What do you think? Do you think he has done enough?
I do. And it's like you were saying, I think part of it is his style, just what he brings in there. I mean, we saw his demeanor basically this week, what he was kind of lobbying to do, and then he goes out there and does this kind of performance, and it really made me sort of again miss the Nurmagomedov fight that was supposed to be put together, because you'd have, I mean, that fight to me was like you're putting 2 forces together that haven't really looked all that vulnerable. I thought he did look vulnerable tonight, though. I mean, he was taking some big shots. What was great about him, though, is it just doesn't matter to him. It's just his aggression, his instinct. It's almost like an instinctual thing for him to just keep coming forward. Very creative in his striking. Even in, you know, the angles he was playing, and he was kind of coming down with some punches. I mean, he was just all over the place, spinning. Just such a joy to watch. I know that after you watch enough fights, a guy who fights consistently like that really stands out in your mind. You look forward to watching to him, and that, to me, you're talking about a title. Sometimes the entertainment value has to sort of trump in other ways. I know Pettis is a very, you know, big name as well. He's a very exciting fighter, but let's face it, if RDA wins and Pettis wins, I don't know if that rematch makes sense yet. It was pretty one-sided, and I don't think people would be clamoring for it just yet.
Yeah, I wonder if Khabib Nurmagomedov is healthy if they go that route. Certainly a fight that I would love to see, but I could also see them trying to build Khabib back up. Don't want to take anything away from Tony Ferguson. He's done a fantastic job, and that was a great performance, and one in which he talked a lot. You know, he put himself out there and he stepped up to the plate. So congratulations to him. Other big winners tonight: Evan Dunham picking up a very impressive win, I thought, over Joe Lozon. You were not impressed? You're shaking your head.
I was very impressed, but it was hard to watch Joe Lozon take that many shots. He was taking a lot of shots in that fight.
You know who I was also very impressed with? John Herrera, early on the card. Nice win for him. Took this fight on essentially like a week's notice, and then afterwards calling out Demetrius Johnson. Not necessarily like saying that he wants to fight him. He was actually honest in saying, I'm not there yet, but he did say he's very boring and he's here to revolutionize the division. So big words there from La Pulga. Anything else you want to say about the card? Anything else? Any performance? Anyone you want to touch on?
That heavyweight fight with Gonzaga was... I want to scrub my brain of that thing.
All right, let's move along. Let's talk about the weigh-ins earlier today at the MGM Grand. So you were in attendance for UFC 189. How do you compare it to the weigh-ins we saw today? The atmosphere.
I mean, I thought it was spectacular both times. I think for 189, it was in the MGM Grand Garden both times, and for 189 they pushed the stage a little bit back, so it was a little more full. Yeah. But I mean, I can't complain. That was a spectacle. That's why we do this. Yep. That's why we cover this sport. That's why we love this sport. It's for spectacles like that. That we've been waiting all week. We've been talking about where is this big event feel. It hasn't had this big event feel. It had that big event feel today, and it was just very, very cool to be in that environment. It was a crazy electric environment.
What a sport. All these people come together just to watch men and women step on a scale. Isn't it unbelievable?
The greatest part for me was watching this guy because he was so excited.
Was he crying?
No, he's running around taking photos. He even found some red thongs that he took some pictures of.
Red panties.
There were red panty nights everywhere in that arena.
The Irish, they really know what to do. It's like there's beer cups and everything, and with red panties. So that just kind of gives you an idea of the kind of atmosphere it was. But yeah, to me, this was my first real encounter. I know we were talking a couple days ago, or maybe it was last night. I'm getting confused as to what day we're on now. But I was saying, when do the Irish arrive? When do I fully see it? And I was hoping to see it, and I felt like I really got a blast of that today.
It felt like I was looking at a lot of Photoshop pictures come to life, like seeing Gunny and Maya standing face to face. We've been thinking about Romero Jacare.
And nothing got ruined.
Yes. Like Weidman Rockhold. When I saw Weidman and Rockhold staring face to face, this felt real. And then of course Aldo and McGregor. What'd you make of the face-off? This time Aldo turning the tables and sort of mocking Conor McGregor.
I mean, it was definitely interesting, and it's just cool to see them having fun with it. I feel like this whole entire lead-up, since this whole mega card was announced, everyone's been kind of afraid to talk about it because it's just, we'll see what it is when we get there. It's intact. It's completely intact. It's maybe one of the best cards ever in UFC history, and it was just so cool to see it all come together. I mean, it was all of those fights, all 10 of the people on the main card have headlined a UFC event. That's crazy to me.
And Shaun, before we go, we got to talk about that Holly Holm Q&A that happened before the weigh-in. I mean, look, this was her first sort of, unveiling as champion to the general public. A lot of crazy Irishmen there, drunk Irishmen as well. I thought she handled it beautifully. What do you think?
Oh, she handled that spectacularly, and I felt like the Q&A was really the moment we kind of realized, okay, this is here. Like, this is what the big thing we've been waiting for. And she handled it great. I mean, at one point somebody asked her for a phone number, and she was like, no, my number is 1.
Yeah.
Like, that's a tremendous response. It was a wild scene.
What was that song that they serenaded her with? What was it again? Take a listen. Here's the song. It's an unbelievable clip. The crowd dancing and singing, serenading the new champion, Holly Holm. Check it out.
My question is, you're just too good to be true. I can't take my eyes off of you.
Sounds pretty good.
You feel like heaven to touch. I want to hold you so much. At last, love has survived. I thank God you're alive. You're just too good to be true. I can't take my eyes off of you. Da, 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 da. I love you, baby, and if it's quite all right, I love you, baby. I'll hold you day and night. Oh, let me love you, Holly. Let me love you.
Bravo! That was impressive.
McGregor!
With all due respect to Frankie Edgar, that, in my opinion, was the highlight of the day. Great job, Irish fans. All right, we're done here from Las Vegas. Day 4 in the books. Up next for us, it's a UFC 194 preview / predictions video. That is coming on Saturday. We are just hours away now from one of the most anticipated fights of all time. And, of course, one of the most anticipated fight cards of all time. In my opinion, the best main event, co-main event combo ever. We'll get to that in a second. For now, we say goodbye from Las Vegas. Thank you for watching our coverage on day 4 of this crazy UFC 194 Fight Week extravaganza. We'll see you in a few hours' time.